How's it going? Good? Yes. Good? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our North Star Community service today, and so glad to have you joining us today. Again, I always continue to make the assumption that if you're online listening to this, or if you're here with us, you're going through something. And like we like to say sometimes when we introduce ourselves, I'm such and such, and I got a lot of stuff. So we can all relate to that. So we're continuing to talk about addictive thinking. And so today, well, we've talked about self-deception. And again, what we always remember there is that, and for us out there who's going through stuff, we know that being honest and forthright sometimes can be a little difficult and challenging. So what we always talk about on that is, yes, we do, when we're addicted, we do lie to other people, and we do a lot of things to not be honest, but who we're really lying to the most is ourselves. So then, of course, that kind of leads into all what we're talking about now. And so we've talked about the concept of time, where one of the great lines that all of us have used is, I can stop anytime I want. I went on Facebook for 5 days, so it's obvious I don't have to be on there. I can get on without it, but I'm going to go back and use it, but I am not addicted to it, right? But a number of people I've been told how marijuana is not addictive. And I always go, well, I mean, it's true. For some people it is true. But for those that are addicted, I always say, well, if it's not addictive, then just don't use it for a month. And they're like, well, now wait a minute here, a month. That's, I could quit, but I don't want to because I feel better. Okay. So you get the point. So so we have this kind of strange thing where we say, I can quit anytime I want. Well, we all know it's not true, because if we could, we would have already. So that's one of our big ones. And so today we're going to look at confusing cause and effect. And as addicts, we tend to do that. We confuse what really is causing the problems because we don't want to think that it could be our addiction that's causing it. So we blame other things for that. And so we'll talk about that later. So just real quick, just again, thanks for being with us, North Star Community. We meet on Fridays at 6:30 around back of the church. On Wednesdays, we meet up in front of the church at 6:30, and then Sunday mornings at 9:30. So if you're in the area, we'd love to have you come by. If you are not in the area, but you would like to talk to me about anything you're going through, either you as an addict or family members of addicts, you can always call me at 804-746-5081. or you can email me at csimpson@wgva, which VA means Virginia, so wgva.church. So anyway, I'd love to hear from you at any time. And it's hard, when we're going through all this stuff, either with ourselves or with a family member or a close friend. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to go through this. And so don't be afraid to reach out. So here's a good kind of symbolic story of cause and effect. So, man, my wife doesn't understand me. Woman, what doesn't she understand? Man, she doesn't understand why I drink. Woman, why do you drink? Because my wife doesn't understand me. All right? That is just classic addictive thinking at its finest there. I've known guys that talk about, I think about growing up and hearing guys who were so miserably married, and they'd, doing their tough guy thing and my ball and chain and, I'm stuck with this old lady and stuff like that. And, I'd always go, well, I bet you're not so easy to live with either. I bet you're actually pretty awful to live with. And so, it's always when we get cause and effect mixed up is what we're really doing is we want to blame everyone else so we can maintain our addiction. So if there were a AA meeting one night and this guy changed, this is pretty good. So he changed the word drinker to thinker, right? So here were some questions he asked. So instead of, are you an addictive drinker, he said, are you an addictive thinker, right? So 1, do you lose time from work due to your thinking? Is thinking making your home life unhappy? Have you felt remorse after thinking? Does your thinking make you careless of your family's welfare? Has your ambition decreased because of your thinking? Has your efficiency decreased since thinking? Is thinking jeopardizing your job or business? Do you think to escape worries or troubles? Isn't that funny? But it's so true. It's so true. And, again, I come from the world where I believe addictive thinking always precedes addictive behaviors. Some people argue that with me. And you can't, maybe it's not even that important, but I do think it is important in the sense that if you are to look at a trauma and abandonment as part of the script of your life, which most of us have, then I think addictive thinking absolutely needs to be looked at, addressed, and taken care of. But the problem is, if you're now addicted to a substance or a process or a compulsive behavior or people, you're not going to quit being addicted until you stop. And that's really hard to do when you got addictive thinking going, right? So it's so hard. It really is. Again, if you've been listening to me, I'm kind of a fan of Russell Brand's book, Recovery. Now, again, for us, pious little Christians out there, you kind of got to get past his language sometimes. But a lot of stuff he has to say is really good. And so Russell Brand is if you don't know who he is, he's he was there for a while, a pretty hot comedian and actor. But he's been in recovery for about 15 years now. So really cool. And I've really come to really respect him from his writings and stuff. But so he's just talking about himself here a little bit. He goes, so I'm going to read a little bit here, so bear with me. I know then that looking at porn won't make me any better, that to look at porn, even though I have this knowledge, would be a pointless retread of a well-worn path. But as with heroin, chocolate bars, or relationships with inappropriate partners, knowing it won't work has not stopped me from indulging, right? As if I have a negative faith in a self-destructive doctrine that life cannot be better than it is now, that I don't deserve better, that I am worthless and dirty, so who cares what I do to cope? I have a feeling a whole bunch of us just went, oh, yeah, I got that one. Once I topple, go active, decide to pursue my nominated object of addiction, whatever that may be, I inwardly switch to a circuit of behavior that is distinct from my better nature, which means his addictive thinking is taken over and has said to him, it's better to use than not to use, which we know doesn't go well after that. I'm going to read one more of his quotes. Once I go, I've gone. There have been many instances in my life where in the midst of some self-generated chaos, and you're going to say self-generated, because let's be honest, when we're addicted, we create lots of chaos, correct? Oh, you shake your head, you know what I'm talking about. Life where in the midst of some self-generated chaos, I've been granted the benefit of hindsight whilst the event is still unfolding. It often takes the form of a mental bird's eye view. I seem to float up out of me, a yard or two above the carnage I've created, and look down at other me thinking, oh, look, there I am. I'm actually persevering with this mayhem. It's almost certainly a terrible idea. Oh, well, too late now. I might as well jump back in with him and finish this off. This is not diminished responsibility. I'm responsible for all the things I've done. It's just I wasn't this me while I was doing. But isn't that great? Don't we understand that? Oh, my gosh. So many times when we had the chance to stop and our addictive thinking kicked in. I always like to kid people who are going through addiction. I do have dark humor about this, though. You have to apologize. I apologize for that sometimes. But I always go, you know, you really are the most stressed person on the planet. You have it more. You have it worse than anyone else, and nobody could possibly understand children problems or work problems or relationship. No one but you has these problems. It's just terrible, right? Some reason they don't laugh with me when I say that to them. But it is true, and we all know it. I do it when I'm in my addictive thinking. My anxiety gets up, my agitation gets up, my depression gets up, and the world's not good, and everything bad's going to happen, blah, 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 right? I even know I'm doing it. Like Russell said, I'm up above watching it. I even know I'm doing it, and I still do it, right? So how do we do that? You know, why do we keep doing this? And so much of it, I think, comes from how we were raised, what we saw as role models, all those things. But once we become addicted, again, you can't forget what the purpose is. Addictive thinking has a purpose, and we can't forget this. Addictive thinking's purpose is to keep us addicted. I don't know how to say it to you. That's what it's for. If my midbrain right here is saying more is better, which it is, and my front of my brain is going, we need to stop, but the highway's kind of washed out between the two. It's hard for them, and so the front of the brain is going, stop, you got to quit this, you're dying, you're gonna end your life today, you're gonna blah, 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 and our midbrain's going, that's down the road, we don't care, more's better, right? And so addictive thinking's job is just to simply keep us using, whatever that means. For some of us, it's substances. For some of us, it's hooked into terrible, dysfunctional relationships. Others, Facebook, pornography, Amazon. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a DSM-7 that's going to have Amazon as an addiction, because I can guarantee you it is one. And again, what's it built around? It's about impulsive, in-the-moment buying. I always think about, this is kind of off subject, but I always think about a financial advisor who's a friend of mine talks about how she sees such horrible decisions from people financially when they're angry, how they just make terribly destructive. And I think we'd all agree when we're in our addictive mode, we make some pretty destructive decisions as well. So let me read Romans 9 here, and kind of two different subjects here. Romans 9 is really quite a full chapter in Romans if you really look at it. So the first part is Paul's talking to us about, so we're glad that you're so smart, you know more than God does, right? So I always appreciate Paul's sarcasm. And he goes, who in the world do you think you are to second guess God? Do you for one moment suppose any of us knows enough to call God into question? So I always think this is kind of a good one to look at here with cause and effect, because how many of us have gone out and completely did chaotic, destructive behaviors, and then go to God and say, God, why are you punishing me? God, why are you doing this to me? And you're going like, well, I think you kind of did that when I last saw. We were talking in the Sunday school class today about someone and who, kind of looking at someone in a relationship, and all of us are sitting on, this is obviously not a good idea. But I'm not so sure that person sees that, right? Because we want to see what we want to see, and we think crazy things like, well, As one person said to me one time, I just thought I could love him to health. Yeah, that never happens. I just want to break that to all of you. That doesn't happen. Yeah, I remember one time someone sitting off there going, I'm so distraught. My boyfriend just broke up with me. I picked him up from jail. I was bringing him home. He doesn't have a job. He can't drive. He lives with his parents. I said, well, how old is he? He's in his 40s. And I said, you need to help me here. What is it? What are you attracted to here? I mean, I don't get it. But in her addicted mind, she was very attracted to that. But so also with this, let's not forget the other part of Romans 9 here when Paul talks about, Hosea put it well, I'll call nobodies and make them somebodies. I'll call the unloved and make them beloved. In a place where they yelled out, you're nobody, they're calling you God's living children. So I hope we hear this, and we're going to keep talking about here, because the fact is, when we are addicted, the other assumption I immediately make is that whoever loathe ourselves. I mean, we hate ourselves. You know, I always kid about one of the things we always talk about is the worst thing you can do when you're addicted is go to the basement, go fetal, and suck your thumb. That's the worst thing you can do, and guess what we all want to do? We want to go to the basement, go fetal, suck our thumb. Because it's some way that helps us feel better, which means helps us feel worse about ourselves. So we always talk about how, when you're there, you have those internal debates with yourself. They go really well, right? Right? Like you're sitting there going, Craig, you are the greatest ever. No, you're better than great. You're awesome. Well, I think you're more awesome today than you were yesterday, right? That is not what we're doing when we're fetal. We're going, I'm a loser. I'm awful. I'm terrible. I'm the worst. Nobody could possibly love me. There's no future. We go on and on. It's like I was saying last week, that great Rodney Dangerfield story about him drunk in the car, in the floorboard of his car, and Harold Ramis is driving him home, and he's going, I'm the worst, most low-life, terrible person ever lived, on, and finally he stops and goes, you can't stop me at some point here, right? But when we do that, we're just so tough on ourselves, and our cause and effects just get so switched. I always like to read this just because it's so confusing, but I've never again had an addict ever tell me I'm not right on this. And so the confusing world of an addictive thinking. I assume abandonment from those that love me due to my addictive behaviors, right? So because I loathe myself so much, I'm out there destroying myself and creating all sorts of chaos, no-win scenarios. I'm blaming the world for everything, but yet I know I'm the problem for everything. You hear the contradictions? That's what happens when we're addicted, when we're trying to avoid pain in our lives, and we're trying not to think about the misery of our lives, all those things. So we just become so addictive to pain and misery and all that stuff. And so what I do is I know that the people who love me aren't going to tolerate this. They're going to get rid of me. And I kind of want them to, but it's the last thing I want them to do. That's what gets so confusing about all this. So I assume abandonment from those that love me due to my addictive behaviors. Because I assume abandonment, I will do everything I can to alienate the people around me. And I know for you guys that are family members, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, they just continue to hurt us, right? They're vicious, they're angry, they're hurt, they're mean, all these things. But here's what you need to hear from the person that's doing all this is I actually hate what I'm doing. I hate being mean. I hate being all these things. I hate being addicted, but I cannot stop. So since I can't stop, I'm consumed with my addictive behaviors. And I will do everything to keep them alive. So there's this major battle going on. You've got the midbrain going more. More's better. More alcohol, more Facebook, more whatever, gambling, more 38 broken relationship. But this keep more. And you know that it's destructive, but you can't stop it. So what do? We get even more confusing. And we live with bravado. And we look like we have everything under control and we need no one. The number of people I've heard in my life go, I don't need anyone. I'm my own person. I'm my own man. Don't need this. I'll just do it on my own. I just go, okay. See you later. Because all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. But think about it. As an addict, what do you loathe yourself, which means you find other people who loathe themselves, and you become a tribe, and you become wildly dysfunctional. So yeah, there's nobody in those tribes you can count on except for to use, right? So I live with bravado, and I look like I have everything in control. I don't need anybody, right? But in reality, I live in absolute fear of being alone and losing those that love me. So the healthy people in my lives who actually love and care about me, I try to hurt because I know eventually they're going to leave me anyway. So let's get it over with. Let's just get it done. Since I assume abandonment, I will do everything I can to hurt everyone. But here's what's important. Abandonment is the last thing I want, but my addictions are stronger. Isn't that confusing? You know what's so confusing about it? This is like some of the Yogi Bear statement. This is so confusing, I get it. But as family members, we sit there and we bear the brunt of hurt, and and we're like, how many times have we said this either to someone or to ourselves? If you don't stop, you're gonna lose everything. We always think about substances with that, but I know people who are so addicted to Facebook, pornography, gambling, they spend 5-6 hours a day online. Well, somewhere you got to sleep. I mean, at some point, you got to sleep. At some point, you got to eat, right? I mean, I don't know if this is a true story, and this is not funny, but I got to tell you, it's hard not to smile about it. Supposedly, in Japan, a gamer was so addicted to his gaming that he actually starved to death. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I read. He forgot to eat. Now, that's addiction, right? We can probably understand that a little bit. So, self-loathing, to me, is the key to understanding addiction. We live our lives. I mean, we live our lives avoiding all that pain that we suffered. And the problem is, the more we avoid it, the worse the pain gets. And so then when you hear things like, God loves you, that's like, right. I can think of so many times I've heard, if you knew the things I've done, I'd get struck down by lightning if I stepped my foot in a church. Which I think actually is an indictment on us as Christians, by the way, if I might say so. But God, again, for you're out there, if you're listening, God loves you. I just can't say it enough to you. He does not keep score. That's you. So trauma and abandonment creates so many problems in our lives. You hear me talk about the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experiences survey. I guess survey or questionnaire. I'm not sure what you call it. If you haven't done it, go look at it. It's fascinating. Look at some of the statistics on it. But North Star on Friday nights is filled with people who have very high ACE scores. It's not a coincidence. It's what we've experienced, and it's why we're there. And the part I always throw in there that we sometimes don't always see is the abandonment piece. Because abandonment can be a little less obvious, but it's certainly just as powerful. And the problem with abandonment, I think a lot of times, it just permeates everything, your whole life. Like I say, if someone comes up and punches me in the face, I get that. That's trauma. That's abuse, right? But when I'm slightly critically labeled my whole life, when I'm always feeling like I've disappointed my parents my whole life, when I feel like I've been told that I'm flawed my whole life, when no matter what I do, it's not enough, or it wasn't what it should have been, or all that stuff, that stuff takes a toll. And what I see a lot of times with abandonment is the childhood script gets flipped, where I am the child and now put in charge of my parents' emotional needs. And that is, A, wildly unfair, and B, wildly destructive. And then we grow up and then we wonder why we can't stop trying to fix everybody or trying to behave certain ways so people will love us, because the way we are isn't okay. So we got to do other things. So we've talked about the purpose of addictive thinking, and the thing that really gets confusing about all this is when our judgment becomes distorted, right? So I think about people with PTSD and CPTSD. An example is worked with a couple soldiers recently, and worked with lots of people who've been, gone through childhood trauma. Is one of the common traits of having PTSD is that when you get around people, particularly people a bit louder, you become agitated. You become kind of worked up. You kind of become kind of surly and hard to get along with. And so when I don't know the number of people, I said, well, that's PTSD. And you can just see like these weights lifted off their shoulders because they just thought they were loathing, horrible, terrible people. Well, they probably were hard to get along with. But the point is, when you start understanding this stuff, you can do something about it. And so think about it. So every time that you get around people, think about if you have PTSD, for you that have it, you understand this, and you walk to them, there's a whole bunch of kids, and it's real loud, and they're swinging off the chandeliers, and they're breaking things, and they're having a great time. You get more and more agitated, and you get frustrated, and what do? You kind of go between the two cause and effects. You go, it's obviously I'm a jerk, and I'm being awful. At the same time, you want to go knock them all out, right? So you see how this all gets you all messed up, and it does nothing but create ill will towards yourself, and of course towards other people when you're like this. But it's just so good when you have awareness on this stuff, you can start seeing it. So, I think about one of my favorite places to go is Martyr Land. I'm a good martyr. I can do it really well. If you ever need lessons on it, come talk to me because I can do it, right? So one of the things that one of my addictions is that I'm a workaholic. And again, I always tell people, like people go, well, okay, yeah, you're in America. We're all workaholics, right? Blah, blah, blah. No, workaholism is destructive. It's cost my family in many ways. And so the good news about it is I've never relapsed about this, except for yesterday and the day before. And tomorrow I'll probably work on it too. But there's destruction in it, right? And so what do? So here's my cause and effect. I go, well, I'm glad that everybody thinks we can just get on without me doing all this work, and I'm glad they think this money will just appear like that, blah, 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 right? And so obviously nobody cares about me, so I'm going to go become emotionally distant, and I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm going to be miserable, and I'm not going to, when people talk to me, I'm not going to talk back to them. I'm going to punish them a little bit because they don't understand my pain, right? So then the people around me, they withdraw from me, and they feel a lot of pain because that's what I'm doing, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. What's wrong with them, right? Why aren't they joining me in my martyrdom moment? Because let's be honest, you guys out there that know martyrdom, it's kind of fun. There's a little fun in it. We can feel really bad. It's pretty cool to be sitting there feeling bad for myself and moping around and seeing how bad the world is and how nobody cares about how hard I work, right? But it doesn't work for me. All it does, I alienate people around me. I hurt them. It doesn't work. But when we're in our addictive thinking, so many things make sense. And I suppose probably, I like on Friday nights when we get talking about some of this addictive thinking, it can be pretty funny to hear us talk about things that we actually thought made sense in the moment, right? And some of them are pretty funny. And it's like, in the moment, it made absolute sense that I did whatever, right? And then later, when you're, in hindsight, when you've got more, your thinking's better, you go, I can't believe I did that. But for us that are in recovery, we do understand that. Because we're trying to avoid pain. We're trying to not look at ourselves, and we'll go to great lengths to not do that. I think about someone, I was reading about this where someone said, I cannot go to an AA meeting because that would be dishonest. Because if I went there, I'd be saying that I'm not going to drink anymore, and I am going to drink. Do you hear the flawed thinking there? No, you got to go so you won't drink anymore. Well, I'd go, but then I'd be dishonest. Because again, we know as addicts, we're never dishonest. It's one of the last things we'd ever do. Or how about you guys in broken relationships when you give up all your values trying to save a relationship? And you actually think that's going to work, right? You say, I'm not going to do this, and I mean, if he does that, that's going to be it. And then you go, if he does that again, that's going to be it. If he does that again, I mean it, right? And we actually believe that we're going to change something here. Or how about the guys that get hooked on porn? What do they say? Well, I'm not hurting anybody, first of all. And then, well, my wife and I, we haven't had relations in a while, and she's just always put out with me. I go, really? She's put out with you? Right. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm just on there for a little bit. I go, what's a little bit? Just, and I go, no. Okay, be honest, how many hours? So sometimes it's mind-boggling. It'll be 4 or 5 hours in a night. And they can't figure out why everybody's pulled away from them. Why nobody wants to be around them. They don't get it. Do you see the cause and effect distortion there? I'm on there because nobody appreciates me, right? I work hard, and I just need a little time to relax here. I was only on there for 20 minutes, times 4 hours, right? But you see how the cause and effect, and so then we don't see what we're doing to hurt others. And that's what gets us in trouble. We reverse the script, and it doesn't work well. So, for whatever the reasons, if you're going through financial problems, family pressure, bad relationship, nagging headache, I don't care what it is. Other problems, you haven't ordered anything from Amazon for 3 days and you're in big pain. Whatever it is, the fact is we have to understand what we're doing first. Then we can fix this. So Dr. Tversky says the fact is that addiction usually causes the problems. The formula is always the same. The fact is that addiction behaviors usually cause the problems, but the addicted person believes that the problems cause the addictive behaviors, right? So I hope what you're hearing here is, look at what you're doing. Don't be so afraid. Look at yourself. You're not that bad. God loves you. And you have problems in your life, you're probably causing them. I don't know how to say it to you. It's not everybody around you. It's not because of your wife. It's not because of your husband. Not because of your kids. Not because of your job. Blah, blah, blah. It's because of you. Once you get that, you might make it. So, connection is the key to ourselves, to healthy people, to God. You cannot recover in the basement, fetal, sucking your thumb, accusing everybody else in the world, causing you all your problems. You need to recognize your destructive views, and you have to understand you have enough faith to believe that connection actually works. So again, I always talk about this. There's 3 rules of getting healthier, to recovery. 1 is get healthy people in your life. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean they're necessarily perfect in how they see the world, but they care about you. They care enough to tell you you're being dumb when you're being dumb, and they're there for you when you're doing well. That's what that means. So that's the North Star community is. We are filled with healthy people. When you go to North Star, nobody's selling you anything. Nobody's trying to get you to buy something. You're there just to be around other people on the same journey as you. So we have our rules on this, and the rules are rule number 1, if you want to get healthy people in your life. If rule number 1 doesn't work, try rule number 2, get healthy people in your life. If rules 1 and 2 don't work, try rule number 3, get healthy people in your life. And we all know, for you guys sitting here, you all know we cannot get well without feedback. We don't like it sometimes, but when we're talking in group, you can hear it. You can hear yourself talk. You start to understand what you're doing. You hear about things. You understand the more objective way of looking at addiction. You can actually get past this. And connection can be accomplished But we have to see our behaviors. We have to recognize our pain. And we have to be able to come back for more and more of the joyous, constructive feedback, correct? But here's the good news. Our hope is that as addicted as you are, our brains have an amazing capacity to recover. It's amazing how our brains can heal. It takes time. And what's even more amazing, and I think they are connected, by the way, is that we have a Lord and Savior who has an amazing capacity to love. And it's called grace. God loves us. If you could get that part, the rest will eventually take care of itself. So again, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll start seeing that when you want to start blaming everyone else for your problems, you might want to look at you, which I know is hard to do. And the only way you can really look at you is to get with other people that care about you. So we always end our meeting with the Prayer of Serenity, and so we'd like to do that again today. And really listen to this prayer. It is such a powerful prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and the next. Amen. So again, don't keep score. Trust in God's love. And again, thank you for joining us today.